Hey folks, decided to do this video from home because the office is just too hot already this morning. This will be our study in Proverbs for Wednesday, July 14th, 2020. We're going to start with Proverbs 20:23, which says, "Diverse weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good." This is a thought we've seen before in this book. In fact, backing up just a few verses to Proverbs 20:10, we read, "Diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord." Diverse weights and measures and false scales were all ways of cheating people out of their money. A false balance might be a little off balance so that people don't get quite as much as they pay for. A false measure might be just a little shorter than the standard, and each customer is cheated out of just a little, and the seller keeps it all. Such things are said to be an abomination to the Lord, and the word abomination in the Old Testament translates from a Hebrew word that speaks of something being absolutely disgusting. The use of these falsehoods in sales is something that's been around for a very long time. And has found its way into every generation. See, people generally don't care that God forbids such dishonesty. Not only is the condemnation of such practices found twice in one chapter of Proverbs, it is part of God's law. Deuteronomy 25 says, "Thou shalt not have in thy bag diverse weights, a great and a small. Thou shalt not have in thine house diverse measures, a great and a small. But thou shalt have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that thy days may be lengthened in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. For all that do such things, and all that do unrighteously, are an abomination unto the Lord thy God." False advertising might make you a lot of money, but if you use false advertising, God considers you disgusting, an abomination. The God of truth cannot and does not condone such intentional deception. It may be increasingly difficult to be an honest business person in this world, but as God's children, it is important for us to be honorable in all that we do, and thus in the buying and selling of items, we need to make sure that we are honest and fair. Now let's move on to the next verse in Proverbs 20. Verse 24 says, "Man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way?" This is an interesting verse, and it's kind of a reminder of how totally dependent we are upon God. Any ability to go anywhere, or for that matter to do anything, we have only because God has given us that ability. Some people excel in one area, and some excel in another. Some people just seem to have a natural draw to certain activities, whether it's athletics, music, writing, gardening, cooking, cabinet making, and so on and so on. Why we differ so much one from another is something we could ponder and debate all day. But in fact, it's really very simple. God has given to each of us what we have. And in His wisdom, He has not necessarily given us everything we might think we want. Since we are dependent upon God for our very being, we have to accept that we are also very dependent upon Him for guidance regarding the way that He would have us to go, the way that He would have us to act, the way that He would have us to use the abilities that He has given us. I've made all kinds of plans in my life. Some of them have actually come to pass. Others never came anywhere near a reality, and I have to be okay with that. James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15 says, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that." You know, we act presumptuously to some extent every day. We assume we're going to make it through a day. We assume that our plans are going to come to some kind of fruition. But the fact of the matter is, we don't even know for a fact if we're going to be here through the end of any given day. What is your life? It's a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. How short our time is on earth. And because we can't know what is coming, even in a given day, we might assume certain things are going to happen, but since none of us can actually see into the future and know what we're going to accomplish and what's going to happen, we ought to be willing to say that we have plans to do this thing or that thing, and if the Lord is willing, then we will be able to do those things. Sometimes we may have plans that seem good to us, but God says no. He closes that door, and that's because it's a path He does not want us to take. This may even be true sometimes in our service to Him. In Acts 16, starting in verse 7, we read, "And they were come to Mysia, and they essayed to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit suffered them not. And they, passing by Mysia, came down to Troas. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. There stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, Come over into Macedonia and help us. And after he had seen the vision, immediately we endeavored to go into Macedonia, assuredly gathering that the Lord had called us to preach the gospel unto them." Now, though we don't have visions of Macedonians beckoning us to come forward, the same God who guided Paul is with us as well, and He guides us. Paul's intentions to go into Bithynia were good. He wanted to do good things. He wanted to honor God there, but God had other plans for him. Sometimes we make plans and God changes them. Sometimes it would do us good to remember that we were created to glorify God and that He knows best what paths we should take. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says, Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. Since we are completely dependent upon God, it would be wise to not simply acknowledge Him in the modern sense of the word, but to actively seek Him, to know His will and to do His will. And here's something to think about. When we read, in all thy ways acknowledge Him, we might think in all your doings, in all your inclinations, in all your mannerisms, but the word way here is actually translated from the word road. So in all your roads, that is, whatever path you may be on, acknowledge God. And acknowledge comes from a Hebrew word that speaks of knowing and understanding, and thus of acting in accordance with what one knows and understands. So whatever path you may be on, always be growing in your knowledge of the Lord, and always be willing and ready to actively put His will to work in your life. After all, He knows us better than we will ever know ourselves. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 139, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. The psalmist is saying, Lord, you know me better than I know myself. You know what I'm going to say before I've even figured it out. This is amazing knowledge. We can't understand all of the knowledge of God, but we can get hold on the fact that He knows everything better than we do. Our proverb says, man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? Well, we can each understand ourselves in a rather limited way. But our Heavenly Father understands us perfectly. He knows our strengths and our weaknesses, and He knows how they can best be used. He knows what is the best path for us each and every day. So let's take that in mind, and when our plans don't seem to be turning out the way we had hoped, it might be a good time to say, my Heavenly Father knows better, and He is directing me in a way that is best. Be glad for His constant presence with you in your life. Be glad for His guidance, and always remember His promises. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a blessed day. Take care.